welcome. So this is, again, a yoga Pilates fusion class, so we're going to do some things that are sort of related to Pilates mat work and some things that are much more yoga related. There's some overlap, but not much. We kind of just borrow from each other a little bit. Yoga, generally speaking, is really about the mindfulness that we're applying to the practice more than the practice itself, but it has specific movements or poses that are unique to it, as does Pilates. So we're going to take a moment to just decide how you want to begin. We're going to lie down. I'm going to put a block underneath my shoulder blades and a block under my head. So I've got two blocks organized here, one on the smaller height, and I do it with the width going across the middle of my back, so I can get both my shoulder blades on this block. Some people prefer it to be almost kind of more in the middle of the shoulder blades, so you could turn it the other way if you like it better that way. In lieu of blocks, you could roll up a blanket, you could do a pillow, like a throw pillow or something like that as well. Or you can just get rid of all of it and just lie down. So this, what I like about it is that I tend to curl up in a tight little shape, and this opens up and gives me a little better access to my breathing muscles. Ugh. So it's my favorite way to begin in the morning, but if you have a more favorite way, you could start that way. And then just join me at the point where we start moving things again. All right, so I like my head a little higher, so it's not quite as fishy feeling, and by that I mean the fish pose, which is a pose where the chest is elevated but the head kind of dangles backwards. So I prefer my head to be more supported, but if you like that sort of slightly dangling neck, you can adjust the height underneath your head so it's a little more friendly. Now this position with the feet for me is the most sort of low back supportive, and that's constructive rest. So the femur bones kind of drop into the hip sockets and it keeps the low back from overarching. I'm also a fan of just having the legs completely straight. That feels nice, and it does, to me, make it feel like my rib cage lifts just a little bit higher, so there might be a tiny bit more back bend sensation to that. And then somewhere in the middle for me in terms of the spine, but a lot more sensation in the legs, is to put the feet together and hang out in that position. So you can experiment. Sometimes I'm surprised by the one that I like on a given day. I change my mind, y'all. That's the way it goes. And then kind of settle in. So I snuggled my shoulder blades close together, put them right on the top of this block. And basically I've got the block lined up so that the bottom of my shoulder blade lines up about with the bottom of the block. So the weight distribution for my upper back is mostly resting on my shoulder blades, resting on the block. If it's a little lower than that, it pokes me in the spine, and I'm not a fan. Right? The shoulder blades taking the weight on the block is perfect. Feels nice. Now I'm definitely noticing some sensation of stretch kind of right here at the front of my shoulder. So I'm just working with that, changing my arms slightly, just trying to find the just right spot. And then of course breathing. So deep, smooth breathing, trying to make some space in between the ribs by getting the ribs to flare a bit. Just notice, like, is one side a little different than the other? Is there a little bit of tenderness in some particular part of your shoulder or your neck? You're just going to be mindful of it, address as you can. Now generally I like to breathe a little more deeply, kind of let the low belly navel kind of area get as full as possible. But with the opening here, I try to give like every 3 breaths or so, just kind of constricting the abs just enough to get the ribs to really move. And that's just so that I can free some space in my intercostal muscles. It's more comfortable for me to breathe a little deeper in the abdomen, but every few breaths isn't so bad. So just kind of notice how much movement you have there. And we'll do about 4 more breaths. Alrighty, so I'm going to start with the block that's under my head and slide that guy out, and then I'm going to roll to my side and see if I can get this other dude out of here. Oh, that worked out. Okay, then I'm going to come back onto my back here. Oh, and this is the best part of this whole thing to me, is this kind of sense of the upper back, sort of the movement of tissue in the upper back as I come off the block. So it feels like things kind of spread out and get a little bit wider. There's a sense of kind of softness or release in the shoulder a little bit for me. And this is this thing you want to kind of just pay attention to. Is this thing that I'm doing, this block, working? Does it do things to me that I find really pleasant? Because that'll kind of give you a better sense of whether you always want to use a blanket or whether you want to switch it up. I like to switch it up. But it'll give you a sense of what's kind of better in that way. Okay, so with that, we're going to do some really just kind of gentle little movements to warm up the abdominals. And these are not meant to be really big movements. They're meant to be quite small. So we're really concentrating on this sense of just trying to warm up one particular band of tissue. So we're going to start with the feet resting in constructive rest. You just want the feet on the floor so that it feels like your femur bone kind of, that big thigh bone drops into the socket really nicely and settles. There's no torquing or pulling on your low back. Okay, so with the hands behind the head so you can press your head into your hands and maintain a nice stable neck, we're just going to curl up enough that we feel this upper band of the rectus abdominis, the middle part of the abs, getting nice and toasty. So we're just curling up and coming back down. Now you can curl the tailbone in as well. So there's a little bit of movement in the bottom half of the abdominals. Mostly we're focusing on that center band. So just exhaling, curl in. Inhaling, let yourself return to neutral. Exhaling, curl in. Inhaling, return to neutral. I'm really trying to just focus on that upper band. Just letting the rest of my body respond to that. But I'm trying to consciously contract this upper band of muscle to initiate this lift. Okay, so we'll do about 4 more of those. And really tiny movements done with a lot of focused control can be really powerful. So 1 more there. Now, taking one leg up on top. So I've got my right ankle on top of my left thigh at this point. I'm going to leave that. And then I'm going to come up a little and twist my left elbow towards that right knee. So now I'm going to recruit not only this little kind of upper band, but also some oblique. Coming up and twisting. And again, we're trying to focus on, like, feel the muscle contract to lift you, and just the tiniest movement, but really consciously done. It also informs me about whether I have any like tension or soreness in places I may not pay attention to. Let's do 1 more. All right, so then I'm gonna pause right here and taking my hands out from behind my head, I'm just gonna make sure my neck is, you know, in a nice neutral, stable place. And then we're gonna scoop the hips up, trying to leave this right leg across the left, but hold the hips steady. So there's a tendency for the right hip to wanna drop. We're just gonna see if we can keep it steady. And we're just going up and coming back down. So we're just gonna scoop up and then come back down. So if you need, I like to do this. I put my elbows on the floor and kind of press my upper arms down. I have little robot hands because that's the best way for me to keep my shoulders steady. But you can do it however you like. But this gives me just a little bit more support in my upper back. Ooh. So I've got that shoulder support to hold me steady. So we're just scooping up and scooping down. Two more. Scoop up. Scoop down. Try to see if you can feel, like, is it the glute that's doing most of the work? Is it the thigh? For me, it's largely glutes. And then we're going to just release that leg. Now, you can do little windshield wipery moves, but we're just going to pause for at some point, right? Just pause back in that constructive rest shape. And feel the right hemisphere and the left. We're going to stay on the right hemisphere, so we're going to do one more move before we switch to the other side. But just notice if you can feel any sort of asymmetry here. And then letting this left leg extend out. I'm going to keep the toes pointing straight up. I'm going to put my arms again, kind of press the upper arms into the floor. This time I'm going to let my hands come down to the ground. And then I'm going to squeeze the sides of my waist in. So that's the action, kind of straight leg, digging just a little bit into the heel, hugging in the sides of the waist, pressing down into the upper arms. That's going to stabilize my torso. Then I'm going to take this right leg straight up, bring it across the body. And you can make whatever size circle your hip will allow. So if your hip needs to make a smaller circle, make a smaller circle. If there's a lot of uncomfortable popping there in your hip or a little tendon that slips around on a bone, just modify your circle and see if that helps. You can also modify the angle. So if you externally rotate the leg, it might be more helpful, or internally. All right, so we're going to do one more like that, coming across the body, trying not to let the hips roll at all. Big sweep. When we get to the center, we're going the opposite direction. Out to the side first, sweeping down to the bottom and coming back up. And again, small movement with control. So we're really trying to use the abdominals to help stabilize the body. The leg is doing the resistance, and then hopefully we're also sort of feeling the muscles all around the hip start to warm up. Okay, last one of those. All right, so then bring that right leg in, give it a little snuggle, and then spin the right foot in circles. Go the other direction. And then point and flex the foot. Try to get a little movement in the joints of the toes. Maybe even a little movement in the bones of the center of the foot. Now, taking that right leg and putting it right down into the constructive rest position, putting the left ankle up on top. All right, and then just adjust so the hips feel like they're stable. Hands behind the head so you can keep your head kind of pressing back into your hands. Adjust your pose as needed. We're going to curl up, and again, we're going to feel ourselves really contract, and then contract the side waist to bring ourselves into the twist. Small movement with control. Keep the head pressing into your hands so that the neck isn't trying to do the work, right? Really focus as best you can on these actions. How far do the muscles extend that allow for this movement? Let's do two more. All right, so still leaving the leg up, snuggling the shoulder blades in. And again, you may have to adjust the footing so that you can scoop the hips up. Ooh, and And bring them down nice and slow with control. Okay, so we're trying to feel, again, it doesn't have to be a big lift. It's just so that we can feel the muscle that's responsible for stabilizing us in this position. Notice the muscles that try to, like hold that hip steady. So we're trying to hold that left hip level with our right hip, not letting it fall to the side. 2 more. And I'm noticing the contraction in the glute. And anywhere else that might be going on. All right, yogis. So we're going to stretch the right leg out, toes are up, arms are nice and firm, hugging the sides of the waist. I'm going to angle myself a little differently because I will smack a plant. So we're going to come across the body and sweep that circle out. And again, we're trying to hold the torso nice and stable while you make that circle. So hug it in. Feel that resistance trying to drag your hip up into the air as you come across or as you go out. We're going to come to the center point and switch the direction. All right, so we're going out and coming down to where both legs meet and coming straight back up the center. Two more. And then you're coming up and you can grab hold of that leg, give it a little snuggle, and spin your left foot in circles. And then go the other direction. And then when you're ready, point and flex. And as you're pointing and flexing, just trying to get a little movement in the toes, the joint between the toe and the metatarsals, and maybe those little metatarsals in the middle of the foot. All right, now we're gonna flip ourselves over. So you might have to scooch like all the way off the edge of your mat so that we can turn ourselves onto the belly for some cobras. Okay, now again, tiny movement, big reward. So we're gonna really use the back muscles. So I'm gonna try to keep my neck completely out of it, just let the neck go along for the ride, but really energize the legs, the glutes, and the muscles that extend up the spine. So hands are pressing. We'll use all of that to lift yourself up, so there's no pressing from the arms, no pressing from the head. We're just gonna keep the hands where they are, and inhale a lift, and exhale, come down. So just little baby cobras. You're really feeling the action of the back. Keep your hands planted. All right, we're gonna do one more. All right, so we're gonna bring the elbows to the ground. So they're slightly forward of the shoulder and maybe slightly more narrow. You just want to find the spot where it feels like your shoulder sort of holds itself so you're not sinking in towards your ears. And then drop your chin, and we're just going to trace a line with the chin up and over the shoulder. And you can look back with your eyes. I keep my eyes closed. But the angle that we're going at is if I could spy my little toes behind me, okay? And then bring the chin down and go up over the other shoulder like you're trying to spy your little toes behind you. So we're just going to go back and forth about 4 more times. Just letting the chin kind of follow the collarbone down to the breastbone and then up over the opposite collarbone, etc. And again, not a huge movement, but notice if it's quite intense for certain muscles anyway. I'm going to do one more. So we're going to do a little shoulder stretch, and this can be quite intense. So you can adjust the arm so that the palm is up or down. You can bring the arm closer to the body or further up. I'm going to go kind of halfway. So I like my palm up. I'm reaching my right arm out to the right. It's lower than my shoulder, maybe lined up with the bottom of my rib cage. And then I'm going to take my left leg and bring it over. Now, before I do anything else, I'm going to adjust my shoulder so that it feels like I'm resting on the front of my arm bone and the front of my shoulder. And there's no numbness or tingling in my fingers. And then I can let this left leg kind of hang out just like that. You can straighten that leg out if you like. You can wrap the other arm around behind your back or leave it up front. I leave it up front because I can't quite tilt back far enough to feel like I don't have some momentum trying to drag me forward. So just noticing where that lands for you. And then I use this a block for my head, but a pillow or a blanket would do. I'm just going to take a few more breaths. All right, so we're going to pick up this left leg, bring it back. Give that arm a moment just to rinse out, and I do little like shoulder circles. And then eventually I'll do a little bigger movement, but we're going to do the other side. So I'm going to stick my left arm out so it goes out. Again, for me it's about level with the ribs, but I play with it when I get there. I've got a support for my head. I take the right leg up and over. Rest that foot on the ground. Make adjustments for everything I need to adjust. Shoulder, etc. And then I just hold with this arm. So you could wrap the other arm around behind. And again, just kind of finding the right angles. There shouldn't be any numbness or tingling in your fingers. If there is, try your arm a little lower or try bending the elbow slightly. And don't be too worried about trying to get yourself all the way onto your back or all the way onto even your side. You can lean forward a little bit so that it's just the right amount of pressure. This is a great shoulder stretch for people who spend a lot of time on a computer or on a sewing machine, anything where your arms are sort of held in front of you, hairdresser, any of those things. This is a great stretch. Okay, so one more breath like this, and then I'm coming all the way back around. I'm going to give that arm a little movement. All right, now we're going to kind of use the space we just made with some additional little cobras. So this time, hands a little lower, maybe closer to the rib cage or the chest muscles. Reaching through the legs, lifting. We're going to let ourselves press a little bit into the ground and pull the collarbones a little wider apart. Come on back down. We'll do those 2 more times. So collarbones nice and wide. And just notice if there's a different sensation now with your upper back or shoulders than there was before when we were doing the little baby ones. All right, yogis, we're going to come on back. You can go to child's pose if that's your jam. You can go to downward dog. I'm going to do a little bit of both. A little wobble in child's pose and then some dog. Now for me, it's really important that I get my hands about shoulder distance apart for downward dog. I want the bones of my arms to basically just go right into the shoulders and hit the ribs. So if your hands need to be a little wider apart, you can certainly explore that. See what happens if you kind of give yourself that shoulder distance place and then let your shoulders kind of find a home there on the upper back in about a neutral position. You can walk your feet up and down, do some other little dancier moves. And then when you're ready, bring yourself to a forward bend. Now you don't have to do it right away, but when you're ready, you can. And then we're gonna take a wide-ish stance. So I'm gonna turn sideways just a little easier. It's not as wide as I can go, but it's a little on the wider side. And then I'm gonna bend my knee on the left side and just make sure it doesn't go much past my toes. If it does, go just a little wider. And then I want my knee and my toe to angle the same way. And essentially I'm gonna lean over this left leg and then switch which leg is bent. Straighten out the left one, bend the right one. Come back to that bent left knee. Straighten it out, bend the right one. I'll do that one more time here. And then I'm gonna come to the center, come up halfway, and come back. And then I'm going to do the same thing over the right side. So I'm going to turn the foot so the knee and the foot kind of angle in the same direction. Straighten out and then bend. And I'm mostly trying to stay put here with my torso and just coming back and forth with the legs a bit. Okay, one more. So then I'm going to step myself all the way around to the top of my mat, come up halfway, fold, and then come all the way up to standing, hopefully. Give it a big stretch. And then we'll find a mountain pose. So finding that place where your feet are about hips distance apart, toes pointing forward. Just take stock of your first mountain. And then we're going to lift up. See if we can balance on the toes or on the balls of the feet and then come back down. If you need to skip this, just do the arm work. If you can do the balance work, give it a whirl and then come back down. We're going to do it twice more. I'm trying to avoid my plants here, so a sweeping motion would be nice, but you know, whatever you got at your house. All right, so then we're going to take a big breath, not lifting up onto the toes, but stretching. Exhale, fold forward. Inhale, come up halfway. Exhale, fold. We're going to step back. Now you can go directly to plank or you can go to down dog and then come into your plank. I like the down dog, it just helps me line myself up. And then we're going to lower down, come into a little cobra or an upward dog if you prefer, and come back to downward dog. Now taking the right leg up with you, we're going to take the hips as level as we can, press into that left heel and stretch through that right leg. And then we're going to step that right leg forward. Now maybe it comes straight down the middle, maybe it goes better out to the diagonal. And then bring your left heel around. So we're just going to start right here. So it's like Warrior 2. I've got the feet organized that way, but I'm not going anywhere yet. So from here, I'm going to open myself to triangle. And then come back to this bent knee, kind of hanging. It's more like a humble or a bowing warrior. Okay, triangle. Sort of peeling that open. And you could put a block here if that would be helpful. Little humble warrior. One more time, peeling open into triangle. Coming back to this bowing warrior. Now I'm going to turn this into a half moon balance. I've got to move just a little bit. But moving myself far enough that I won't knock things off the credenza or hopefully dislodge any plants. I'm going to try to open myself up. It's a little dicey here, y'all. But give myself this half moon balance. Oh. Taking a nice big breath. Woo! I'm going to bring my feet to the ground. Oh. All right, I pulled that off without any trouble. Taking myself into plank. And again, you could hold downward dog if you want to, or you can come directly to plank and skip the dog part. Do all fours if that works better for you. Take your left leg up. And again, there's a tendency to lift the hip. We're going to try to keep it level. Stretch through both heels. And then step this guy forward. And again, you can just jiggle your feet into place. So you've got a Warrior 2 position. Let that humble warrior pose pause. And then roll open into triangle. So a little bowing warrior, humble warrior, into a triangle. bowing warrior, into a triangle, and then we're going to go back to our bowing warrior and turn that into a half moon balance. So let's see how it goes. All right, whee. See if you fall, catch. If you're not falling, hold steady and lift. Last breath here. And we're going to take ourselves back into down dog, or go directly to plank, your choice. And then finish that vinyasa. Now we're coming all the way to the belly. So from the belly, we're going to scooch all the way to the right edge of the mat, bend your right knee, and use your right leg to flip you over. So hopefully you're still on your mat. And then that right leg is going to come in. We're going to curl up toward it. Now, you can keep your hands behind your head so that your head is again, head and neck are nice and stable and anchored, and you force yourself to do the little extra work from the abs, or you can reach your arms out, okay? Again, for me, the most subtle movement is more impactful, and I tend to do subtle movements with my neck I'm trying to avoid. So keeping my head nice and stable, legs are floating, I'm going to curl in, switch legs, stretch through that long leg, and curl in. So concentrating on that abdominal curl, right there. Two more. Good, bringing the knees in. We're gonna let the head rest. Now, you can leave your hands behind your head so that your neck stays in that same position, except you're gonna hold it stable. Or you can let your head rest on the floor. You can put the arms down, or even slightly tuck them in underneath the hips. So these legs are going to go up together. Glue the thighs together, spread the toes apart, heels touching, toes separate, and then we're going to lower the legs down. Now our job is to squeeze in and hold the torso stable and not like the low back arch. We're not trying to smoosh the low back, we're just trying to keep it from arching up. Lower and down, 4, 3, 2, 1, holding, 4, 3, 2, 1, and back. 1, 2, 3, 4, 4, 3, 2, 1, back. 1, 2, 3, 4, 4, 3, 2, 1, back. 1, 2, 3, 4, 4, 3, 2, 1, come back. Ooh, we're going to do 2 more. Here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 4, 3, 2, 1, back. Last one. 1, 2, 3, 4, 4, 3, 2, 1, come back. All right, bend your knees. Put your feet on the ground. You can give yourself little windshield wipers if you like. Whew. We're going to eventually use this right leg to flip us all the way back over. Throw in a little extra cobra. And then take it back either to a tabletop or to dog. Take a nice big breath, lift your right leg up behind you. As you exhale, bring that leg forward and then step your left one up to meet it. Come up halfway. Exhale, fold. Come all the way to standing. Give yourself a big stretch. And then we're going to come back to our mountain pose. And see if there's a difference in the way your body feels. Sometimes for me, these get progressively lighter. Now you get to pick your balancing pose. I'm gonna do that same shape that we did at the beginning with the one ankle across. So I'm gonna bring all my weight into my right leg, bend my knee slightly, put my left ankle across the top, and then sink back a little bit like I'm going into a chair. You can get pretty low here. I keep it a little more on the shallow side, and your arms can be like the chair, or you put them together, or you can even reach them back behind you if you like. So if you would rather do a tree or something like that, go for it. So I'm going to try to hold the balance for a few more breaths. All right, so stepping back, and again, we're going to come back to that same shape, that warrior two shape. And this time we're going to add the mermaid, so we're more upright. So we're coming back to reverse and over to side angle. Don't be afraid to turn your rib cage a little bit. So lining yourself up so you have plenty of room on the sides of the waist to get this little mermaid shape. Woo! Try to hold the legs nice and steady. So I'm going to do 2 more of these. When you come back, we're going to swing everything around. So now we're in a wide angle forward bend. The theory with this pose often is that it's taught with the toes pointing in, so the sides of the feet are sort of parallel. But because some of us have twisty bones, that can cause trouble for the knees or the hips. So if there's any sense right now of like a binding or a twisting in those joints, just turn your toes subtly out until that goes away. And then we're going to fold, and you might stay more level with your torso, or the pelvis might come around a little bit farther. Just feel it out. You can let the neck kind of hang out here. Now we're going to add a little twist. Now to do this, I like to use a block, but you don't have to. You can put your hands straight down on the center. I just like a little more height, okay? Pressing the feet into the ground nice and firm. I'm going to rotate just to the point where I feel my right hip start to help me. You can go a little farther if you like. And then come in to the opposite side. I'm really trying to isolate the twist towards my upper back, so I'm less worried about how far around I go, but you might want to think about it differently, so you do your thing. Oh. Okay, so I've done both sides. So now I'm going to step myself up to the top of this mat, come up halfway, and then fold, and then we're going to come all the way up to standing. Give it a big stretch. Find that mountain pose again. Notice if there's a difference, left side, right side. And then we're going to do same thing, but on the opposite side. So whatever your balancing pose was, woo, choose it again. And then we're just gonna breathe, yogis, as best we can. Couple more breaths. I'm gonna pick this foot up and step it back. So I wind up, again, kind of work with the hips so that it feels nice and steady. Work with your ribs so that you've got plenty of space here so that you can stretch in both directions for this little mermaid action. Two more. All right, so we're going to come back, turn the toes again. Now this time I'm going to do an arm bind to create a little bit more of a shoulder opener. Now you could lace your fingers together, For me, that's really tricky. They just don't go anywhere, which is fine. I can make it work, but I've got a strap. So if I put the strap between my hands and give myself a little bit more space, it works a little better. So I'm gonna fold forward and then let the arms come up. Now I'm facing my palms backwards, but you could just as easily face them toward each other. I've got my legs as strong as I can keep them, planting and lifting my kneecaps a little bit so that I've got a little more support for those hamstrings. 2 more breaths. And you're going to release the pose. You can shake out your arms a bit. And we're going to come down to the floor. So you can come like right into a squat and sit down, or come down to the floor sitting in a way that works better for you. So again, this week, definitely today, since we're more focused on sort of more subtle movement in the body, we're going to do these little twisting movements first, and then we'll add the little saws to them. But first, get your feet kind of wide. They don't have to be super wide, like a little wider than the mat, a little wider than hips distance or shoulder distance apart. You can bend the knees if you need and put something under them. We want to sit up nice and tall, so if it feels like the pelvis wants to roll back or roll forward, it might be good to sit on a blanket or a full, something to elevate your hips slightly. Okay, so we're gonna take the arms out. If this is too much for the shoulders, just put your palms together with your thumbs resting on your breastbone. And then we're gonna twist. And again, the movement is very subtle. I don't wanna do it with my arms. I wanna keep the arms level and do this from the obliques. I wanna feel the contraction and release on those sides. Come back to the center. 3 little pulses. 1, 2, 3, come back. 1, 2, 3, come back. Notice the inclination you might have for one hip to try to lift. See if we can leave everything stable and just the obliques are doing that work. 1, 2, 3, not turning from the head and trying to lead with the eyes, but leading with the side of the waist. Good, so 3 little pulses. 1, 2, 3, center. 1, 2, 3, center. We're gonna do one more. 1, 2, 3, center. 1, 2, 3, coming back. All right, so we're gonna release the arms for a moment. So that's maybe using quite a lot of deltoid action to keep those arms in the air. Now we're gonna keep the same sort of movement, but we're gonna add a forward bend to it. This is where it gets trickier and why you might want more elevation under your pelvis, or in my case, I like to have the knees bent, so I'm even gonna put a blanket under my knees so that I've got a little bit of support there because we're gonna do the saw. Now, we're twisting and then we're moving the pelvis forward and then we're pulsing. 2, 3. Now, what we're not trying to do is do this little like tear the hamstring, tear the hamstring, tear the hamstring. So if the whole focal point of this pose is your butt bone, you need one of the backing off things. Either add a blanket under your knees or something, pillows. Sit up higher or don't go so far, okay? So arms are out, we're gonna turn to the right. Does not matter if your arm actually gets anywhere near your pinky, just however far it turns, and then tilting from the pelvis. 1, and you can just hold this steady. 2, 2, 3, coming up. And again, it's really subtle movement. We're not making a huge movement. 1, 2, 3. I turn my head to look at the arm behind me. 1, 2, 3. Sit up tall, get that nice height, turn. 1, 2, 3. Nice height, turn. 1, 2, 3. Notice if the pelvis is trying to help. We're going to do one more set. 1, 2, 3. Coming up, turning. 1, 2, 3. Coming back to the center. All right. Oh. So I'm going to keep my legs wide, but not quite as wide, and I need enough room that I can almost go back all the way onto my back. So I'm going to scoot a little bit forward. And then essentially I'm gonna kind of dig my heels in and bend my knees slightly. And the movement here is super subtle. So I'm moving just from this center band of tissue. I'm gonna take myself forward, and it's a little bit like the teaser, a little bit like the boat pose, a little bit like the roll up, okay? So there's got some qualities to that, but with this little tiny pulse. So essentially from the rectus abdominis, I'm just gonna push one side forward then the other, and then I'm gonna slowly curling in, pressing one side forward then the other, go back as far as I can maintain control of this, and then come back. If your back starts to arch, that's gone too far, okay? So we want to keep this kind of nicely tucked in shape. So reaching forward and then coming back as far as you can maintain that kind of curled up control, or until you think you're going to smack your head on the credenza just before that point. So reaching forward and then coming back. And then coming forward. Again, really subtle little movement. I call this ab braiding because it sort of feels like you're braiding, right? Kind of subtle little things. One more time. And again, just as far back as you can go. As I do this, I get like a little more space, right? And not in this particular case, but like I can go back a little farther and maintain the control. The first round is always a little bit less, a little more shallow. So you may notice that like things just change, or you may not, but I organized myself in front of this piece of furniture, so I was only gonna go so far. Now, we're gonna do some side work. So if you like having your arm for a pillow, use your arm. If you prefer to keep your arm forward, you can put something else, a block or something underneath. I'm laying on my right side first. You could do the left, just know that the cueing might be different, make adaptations. Hips are stacked on top. Shoulders are stacked on top. So the first movement I'm going to do is just a straight up and down movement, flexing at the ankle joint to come down, pointing to come up. Now, with the pointed toe, I'm trying to feel myself lengthen the top side of my leg. With the flexed foot, I'm lengthening the back side of my leg as I'm coming down. So holding steady through the core by lifting the sides of the waist, and then using the leg almost like I'm trying to make my leg longer. Nice and steady, lifting through the top and lengthening through the bottom as I draw the leg back down, okay? You can pick that bottom leg up and hover it if you want to make this a little more challenging to maintain control. If you're finding it really difficult to stay steady in your core, bend your bottom knee a little bit and shift the leg slightly forward. Okay, so lengthening, feel that length through the top of the leg, length through the back of the leg. One more time. All right, so then taking this leg and leaving it in this external rotation, so the toes point slightly up. We're going to circle the leg, try to hold the torso nice and steady, squeeze the sides of the waist in a bit. And then we're going to go the opposite direction, same thing, externally rotated. All right, so then we're going to maintain this lifted leg, except we're going to turn it, so now it's an internal rotation. You might even feel this greater trochanter make a little lump there on the side of your hip. We're going to try to swing this leg forward and then behind us, keeping that internal rotation, and maybe tapping the toe onto the floor. But keep the internal rotation, that's more important than tapping the floor. And again, we're trying to feel this really subtle sense. Here's the internal rotator muscle, and the main one. And then these external hip muscles might be feeling it as well. A little burn there. Holding that shape. Okay, one more time. All right, so putting all of this together, we're going to bring the feet behind us. My favorite one of these little side pieces. Get your hips anchored so they're not leaning forward. We're back to steady hips, steady shoulders. Lift the top leg. Maybe you just pause there and then bring the legs back together, or maybe you lift the top leg and extend it. Bring the toes together and bring the knees together. Keep the movement smooth. controlled, pay attention. Oh gosh, that feels so nice. Last two of those. Oh, I like this little burning situation that happens up here on the top of the hip. All right, we're gonna stretch those legs out. This top leg is coming forward. Now I like to bend my knee, but you could leave your legs straight. We're gonna lift the bottom leg. Just keep your hips nice and steady, shoulders nice and steady. And then we're gonna pulse this bottom leg up for 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Hold it up and squeeze the side of your waist in. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Good. Coming on back down. Now we're going to roll onto our back for a moment. Oh, and we're going to do a little bit of a low boat pose. So, you can keep your hands behind your head. You could leave the legs on the ground and just do this with the torso. So I'm going to squeeze in those abdominal muscles, and then I'm going to hover my legs up so that I'm not feeling any trouble with my back, just kind of holding that. You can reach your arms out if you like that better. Hold it if you can. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And then come on back down. Now you could just roll onto your left side, or like me, you could spin this whole thing around so that you could lay on the other side and still face the screen. All right, hips on top of hips, shoulders on top of shoulders, toes pointing, and then flexing to come down. And again, we're really feeling this movement of lengthening through the leg as we move. Hold and steady through the abdominals. 3 more of those. All right, so when we get down, we're going to take that, leave that externally rotated thigh and circle that leg. Try to hold the torso nice and steady. 3 more, 2 more, 1 more, and then we're going to rotate the other direction. Leave the external rotation, but just spin the opposite direction. Now we're going to internally rotate, so taking ourselves right there, holding steady, right? Try to keep that feeling in the thigh, nice drawn in waist, and then go forward and back. And maybe the toe touches, maybe it doesn't. We're just going forward and back, however much that makes sense. But keep that internal rotation, so it doesn't matter if you actually touch down. We're going to do 4 more of those. 2 more of those. Last one. When you get finished bringing the legs together, feet come behind. So now we're going to put all of these movements together. Knees go apart, straighten out the front leg or the top leg, bring it together, feet and then knees. You guys got the idea. Extend, or maybe you don't extend, you just do the hover. That's fine too. If extending bothers your knees, do the hover. So we're going to do 4 more. Two more. I've got 1 more to go. And then I'm going to straighten out my leg. Whew, bring that top, I like that burn. Bring that top leg over in whatever way makes sense to you. Lift that bottom leg, and then we're pulsing it up for 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, hold that leg up as high as you can, squeeze the sides of your waist in, hold it there, 10, 9, 8, don't let that drop, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, whew. All right, now you can put the leg down. And we're gonna roll onto our back, yogis, because friends, it's time for Shavasana. I know, it went by fast, didn't it? If you have to head out early, just leave me a little note in the chat section. If you go over to the little more, there's a section there that says chat, and just leave me a little note that you were here so I can count you. Otherwise, oh, stretch yourself out, friends. You can put a blanket underneath your legs. Oh, if your low back is sensitive. So the reason for Shavasana, just so you know, like there is actually a reason. We've been sending all this sensory data to the brain. And so Shavasana is the time where the brain kind of can finish processing that data and then also shift into parasympathetic nervous system. So anytime we're moving, there's like the tiniest bit of vigilance. And so what we're doing now is just letting the body completely relax. So no vigilance at all. Relax the face and the eyes and the mouth. Let the shoulders completely soften. So there's no sensory data kind of head into the brain for it to pay attention to. And we can fully shift into that nervous system that is our nervous system for digestion and rest. And most importantly, if you're going to go and get yourself some breakfast, this is a good thing to do first. And you may have to consciously unwind. If you're used to carrying anxiety around with you, let that forehead relax. Let your mouth soften. Let go through your hands and arms. Let your eyes get a little kinder. Sometimes it takes a little longer than 5 minutes to unwind completely. So let's kind of notice for yourself, and you might do like a Shavasana experiment and see, like, is 7 minutes better? Is 10 minutes better? Like, what's the perfect amount of Shavasana? But for our purposes, we're just going to notice the breath again. Take a breath all the way down to your tiptoes. And let it go with a big and then you can wiggle your fingers and toes. Stretch out your hands and feet, and then give your wrist and ankles a little movement. And then bring your arms into a nice big long stretch. curl your knees in, give yourself a little, back massagey goodness. Oh. All right. So we're gonna roll ourselves to the side. You can hang out there for a while if you like. Oh, but when you're ready, sit yourself on up here. And we'll say goodbye to each other with a nice big breath. Big inhale. Big deep sigh. Namaste, yogis. Welcome to the rest of your day.